Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to another online lesson on Judgement SBQ, or we also call it Evaluating All Sources. For this specific lesson, we are actually focusing on the methods to do Judgement SBQ for social studies. So for history students, some of the methods here are relevant, but for history there are some a little bit more of like changes to take note of. For example, like contextual knowledge. So if I have time and energy, maybe I'll do a history version. But for this lesson, it's specifically for social studies, and I'm with Mr Clement Tan.
Hi, it's me again.
Are you my YouTube partner by any chance?
I think I should get some of the revenue that you earned from this.
I earn nothing from this.
Okay, alright, let's go to general guidelines.
Okay, so basically what exactly is Judgement SBQ? Basically it's just like a source handling skills in which you require the use of multiple sources. So it's always the last question. By the time you reach the last question, you would have already finished reading or analysing all the different sources. So now this is like a wrap up of analysis of all your sources.
Okay, so I think something that is important that we all need to take note of is that as much as possible, this question is actually asking you to use all of the sources. But due to time constraint, I don't think we want to write all of the sources. So we need to first identify which sources that you agree or do not agree with the statement. And I think this can be done when you are already evaluating the sources for the prior questions, like question 1 to 4. You should already have at the side of these sources put let's say a plus as if it's actually agree or is it positive, negative sources or disagree to the particular statement. You can actually put at the side already. So when you are referring to it when you're doing question 5, it's much easier. Okay, and of course the answers will need to be on 2 perspectives. So you cannot be like you're answering all everything on the agree and you leave out the disagree part. I mean, you can do that, but your marks of course will not be as good because you don't have a very good big picture idea of the whole all the different perspectives of this particular issue. Okay, so take note also that when you write agree or disagree, okay, I agree or I disagree, you need to link it to a particular source. So you cannot just say I agree because I feel like it doesn't make sense. Okay, so you link it to a particular source.
Okay, so how do I start? The first thing that I always ask students to do is when you read the statement that the question has given you, you need to identify the keywords or key phrases. So you read, identify the keywords and key phrases, and then you unpack the keywords or key phrases. So how exactly do we unpack the keywords or key phrases? We are actually going to show just a sample of how ideally we will want you to do this. The reference here is the O-Level 10-year series 2021, because I'm assuming that at this point, if you're watching this, most of the students are actually students taking your O-Levels. So O-Level 10-year series 2021, the statement question is Dyson's move to Singapore is bad for Britain. So in this scenario here, the keywords or key phrases that you should be highlighting is bad for Britain. So by unpacking bad for Britain, essentially you need to ask yourself, how do I know if something is bad for a country? What would I specifically see? What would exactly happen? You need to really specifically write down how do you know that something is bad? On the other hand, if let's say the move to Singapore is not bad for Britain, means it's good for the country, right? How do I know if something is good? What would I specifically see? What would happen exactly? So what you're doing here is you're kind of establishing criteria or creating a word bank that you can tap into when you're elaborating your source to show how it supports or contradicts a statement. Because a lot of students, when you're doing this question and they're elaborating the sources, they are merely just either rephrasing the evidence, which is actually not accepted, or they are just repeating, oh, hence Dyson's move to Singapore is bad. Oh, hence Dyson's move to Singapore is good for Britain. But in the elaboration, you're very particular about this. You must stay exactly bad how, good how. So we are going to elaborate further on this.
Before we move on to the next slide, maybe just 2 points to share. Okay, for some students, when I see their work, especially on this question, okay, some of you got confused. Like you say, oh, is bad for Britain. Oh, then they elaborate more on why is it good for Singapore, which is actually a very key mistake that you shouldn't be making. Okay, because the focus is only on Britain. Okay, and secondly, the other point is that when they say it's bad for Britain, on the flip side is that whether is it good for Britain or whether is it not bad. Like for example, there's no change to the current status quo. So it may not be that is good, but it may be that there is no much difference. So it's actually not bad. Not that bad for Britain. Yeah. So I think this is something to bear in mind as well as we move to the sources.
Okay, so for example, source A is a pictorial source. It's a cartoon published on social media site in Britain in January 2019. The currency on the notes show that coming out the carpet cleaner is the British pound sterling. So how do I know, based on source A, that Dyson's move to Singapore is bad for Britain? What are the telltale signs? So you must be specific. So the telltale signs of basically like the criteria I will establish to know that the move is bad for Britain is, if let's say the British pound is coming out the carpet cleaner, I will kind of interpret this or infer this to be like a loss of profit. Or money going towards Singapore, I will infer that this means loss of economic opportunities, loss of investments for Britain, because now it's going into competing countries like Singapore, which means that now there's lesser revenue for Britain to tap into in the form of taxation. So these are the telltale signs or criteria or even word bank, words that you should be weaving into your elaboration later on.
I think also it's good to build up your repertoire of vocabulary. For example, when it comes to economic issues, you should know what is taxation, you should know what is revenue, what is profit, what is losses, what are investments, what is, let's say for example, your trade agreements and things like that. So when you know all these words and how you're going to use it, it's much easier to explain your reason. Because if I don't even know how taxation works, then of course you won't actually hit this point on less revenue for Britain, because there's not I wouldn't be taxing, let's say, Dyson as high as before. I mean, they won't contribute as much tax as before, right?
Because when I see students elaborating for this source also, they always just say, hence is bad for Britain's economy, or it negatively impacts Britain's economy. But I need to see what exactly do you mean by negatively impact. Like, how do you know? So you must specifically say, how do you know that it negatively impacts?
Right. Maybe it's even for whom? Is it for companies? Is it for the government? In this case, taxation, I think quite clearly is for the government because they have less revenue to work on. Is it for the people? Because let's say if the investments are moving into Singapore, are we looking at downsizing of Dyson operations, which means that people may lose employment and all that? Yeah. So it needs to be very, very specific to whom the effect is actually affecting. Okay,
so now we have we have unpacked what source A is talking about, what are the criteria or telltale signs. Let's talk about writing of the paragraph. So step 1, reword the question. I have color coded parts of the question and the answer. So the first thing you need to do is you need to state, I agree that Dyson's move to Singapore is bad for Britain. So you're rewording the question and the statement as source A talks about how is economy affecting Britain. So tell me exactly what source A is talking about. After you have established your point, then you need to write your evidence and elaboration. Now this is where you put in the criteria words or the telltale signs that we were talking about just now. So after our evidence, then we say, this suggests that Dyson's move to Singapore is bad for Britain, as it will mean a loss of economic opportunities due to investments going into Singapore. This would mean lesser tax revenues for Britain to tap into for her growth. So this is one paragraph. Remember, one source, one paragraph. Please don't lump all of your sources together under like one big mega agree paragraph or agree essay. One source, one paragraph.
Yeah.
Okay, step 3. After you have written your agree paragraph, let's write your opposing paragraph. So for example, for this is source C.
So can you go back to the agree paragraph one more time?
Yes.
Okay, just something to point out, right? You shouldn't be writing more than 4 statements. So the first statement, of course, you are stating your stand, right? Whether you agree or disagree. Second statement should be your evidence. Third statement, I think naturally you elaborating your evidence. And lastly, you're trying to make sense of how does the evidence show that it's bad for Britain in this case. So maximum 4 statements. If you're writing like 5-6 lines or you're writing way too much, then maybe you need to evaluate on your time management, because this will make or break your SRQ essentially, especially for students who actually write your SBQ first before SRQ. You write too much for this, you only left 10 minutes for SRQ, that's it. So you need to be very strategic in using what evidence to use and how much to elaborate.
Okay, so is the agree paragraph. Now let's move on to our
Disagree paragraph.
paragraph. So for example, I'm using source C. So how do I know that Dyson's move to Singapore is not bad for Britain? What are the telltale signs? Mr. Tan, so what are the telltale signs based on source C?
Okay, I think for this source itself, it's not that it's essentially bad, right? It did mention that okay, there will be no impact on these 4,000 workers. It did also mention that little impact on the tax, so of course I think that's minimal. And they will continue to invest in this British research and engineering sites, which means that there will still be job opportunities. Okay, there will still be tax revenue. So there is really very little change from before. So like what we just now mentioned, if there we are not saying that it's bad, we are just saying that there is minimal change, right? So I think that's also an acceptable way to answer this question.
So now that we have unpacked the telltale signs or the criteria to know that the move is not bad for Britain, let's talk about writing the paragraph here. So similarly, it's really the same method as the agree paragraph. So instead of starting with I agree, you write that I disagree, talk about your point, the move will have minimal impact on Britain, have your evidence, and then similarly in the elaboration, just like how we were unpacking the criteria or the telltale signs to know that the move is not bad for Britain, you put it in your elaboration. So you realize our elaboration isn't just repeating, oh, Dyson's move is not bad for Britain. It's actually rather specific. If not bad, why exactly? How do we know?
I think it's quite clear lah. So for students who wants to actually take note of how do we want to write some of this paragraph, actually doing the slides are actually at that paragraph, you may take a pause and then you want to just take note of the different parts of it. If you want to use it as a sample for you to actually try out other so-called practices for the other papers from the 10-year series.
So we have shown you how to write one agree paragraph. We have shown you how to write a disagree paragraph. So you would remember that there's actually bonus marks for Judgement SBQ. So the first method of getting the bonus marks is actually assessing reliability. So Mr. Ta, how do students actually assess reliability?
For assessing reliability, actually there are quite a few methods, but I think over here in the constraint of time, we are really advising students to assess reliability using the highest level. That means it's whether is it reliable or unreliable based on the provenance itself, whether you can identify whether the source giver is somebody that can be trusted or not, whether there's biasness, whether there's a certain agenda or purpose in the source to it. Then if there is a particular agenda or purpose, perhaps it's not that reliable. So I think all these things, I think we have said it over and over again, but just to emphasize, please try not to I haven't seen before a student assessing reliability over here using cross-references. I don't know how it's going to work. Okay, but try to use it based on provenance explain. I think it's the simplest and the most straightforward way. Okay, take note as well. Okay, for assessing reliability, so how do I put this? Okay, when you first evaluate that source itself, it shouldn't be that the evaluation is wrong, right? Because if the evaluation is wrong, then what's the point of assessing the reliability? That means it's already going to fail, right? So the caveat for giving the bonus marks for assessing reliability is that the evaluation of that source needs to be correct. Okay, it needs to be accurate before the marker will give you the bonus 2 marks. Okay, so just be very careful. So if you are not that confident in your explanation or your link for that particular source, if I'm you, I wouldn't actually assess that reliability, right? Since there is a chance that you will fail. Right? I would put my eggs into a basket that I'm more confident in. Okay, so just something to take note of.
But also while you're assessing reliability, make sure that the source that you're assessing for reliability hasn't been tested for a reliability question.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So for example, if let's say one of the question already asked you to study source B, how reliable is the source, or can you trust the source, then please don't use source B again to assess reliability for bonus marks.
However, if you use, let's say, source C, and you use source C as a cross-reference paragraph before, you can still use source C to assess its source's reliability. I think that's fine. Yeah.
So second bonus method, method to get bonus marks is actually contextual knowledge.
I feel that this is the one that is a bit more challenging for all students. Okay, the main problem about this is that we don't know what is going to be tested. So you can't really prepare for it. So if you are more like you read a lot more and you are more interested in global affairs, perhaps this part here you can try, but we really don't know to what extent would your answer be qualified as 2 extra marks versus 1 extra mark versus no extra mark, right? Because it really depends on the, I don't know, maybe it depends on the marker and whoever that's marking your paper, whether does he agree that okay, whatever you're saying is additional and to what extent is additional.
And to be honest, it's quite hard because it's always a case where SBQ topics are decontextualized. So unless you're you've been reading a lot about Dyson's move, and then just nice like, this whole paper is on Dyson's move, then maybe you can talk about it. So you can try if let's say it's on a topic that you
are interested in, yes. So I think there's still a possibility, just that if I am you, I'll write the contextual knowledge part of it there, and maybe I'll just bang on something else just in case the contextual knowledge part didn't work out.
Okay, so let's move on to the last method to get bonus marks, which is balanced conclusion. The thing about balanced conclusion is you don't need to make a stand because of the fact that it's balanced. So the main idea that you're supposed to do is you're supposed to talk about why there are two perspectives to this issue, right? Why some people support the statement, why some people don't support the statement, which personally I think it's quite hard to do.
I think some ways you can look at it is that there are some, how do I put it clearly? For example, let's take the example of Dyson's, right? Why is it bad for why is it bad for Britain? Why some people feel that it's bad for Britain, why some people feel that it's not that bad for Britain? I think maybe one reason you could consider is that perhaps this move is not just, how do I put it? It actually affects people from different. It cuts across all of society, right? Because whenever it cuts across all of society, the issues that you consider, there are different viewpoints from different people because they may view Dyson's move very differently. Some people may see it as very symbolic, like people are it's like my reputation is at risk and all that. Britain's reputation is at risk and all that. But some people may not see it as such a big thing because they are not personally affected by it. So for this question itself is not that simple, I would say. So I wouldn't really use the balanced conclusion. But if there is some simpler statements, I think you all can try lah. But this one is really very difficult. So
because you also need to get L3 together, which means you need to at least have one agree, one disagree.
Yeah.
So long story short, if you feel like you don't know how balanced conclusion works, it's okay. There are other methods for you to
just do the reliability.
Balance. Yeah, that's probably the easier one.
Reliability,
right?
utility part, I think is easier. Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about things to note. Okay, so
Things
usually
to note.
things to note. So basically, a lot of students at this point of time, they really say that they're running out. They don't have enough time. They're already rushing.
At this point of time, they're running out of time. It's actually for their O levels, or is it for this paragraph? Okay.
For this paper, for O level SS. So usually for one whole SBQ paper, you have like 5 to 6 sources. But I mean, I know when we do practice in class, we always get them to do one paragraph for each source. But during exam, let's be realistic. We don't have time. You're rushing. You need to clear your SRQ also. So you just need 4 paragraphs. 2 agree, 2 disagree.
I think 2 is a good thing also because in case one of it you didn't really do as well, at least there's a backup. At least you're assured of your level 3, right? Because you're giving multiple or two differing perspectives. So I think that is an important consideration.
Or if worst case scenario, like you're really rushing for time, then just do 2, 1 agree or 1 disagree, because at least you'll get level 3 5 marks.
6 marks possible.
6 marks possibly, yeah.
So that one is really when you have no time lah. But we don't advise that. Please try to spread your time out as much as possible. Yeah.
And we always ask students to strategize. So write one. I think there are some students who would be thinking like, okay, I want to settle my agree paragraphs first, then I write disagree. But I think we will usually encourage students to write, after you're done writing one agree paragraph, then just write the next disagree paragraph. So that if let's say while writing you realize like, I'm running out of time, like I need to quickly jump to another question, then at least you can be assured that you have the answers to at least get like a level 3.
You can jump with ease.
So, like what I was saying just now, it's not essential for students to organize your answers by perspectives in order for marks to be awarded. So you don't need to say like, oh, these sources agree with the statement, sources E and F, G agree with the statement. So you don't need to have like a opening line or something.
Just that's a waste of time. Like,
Yeah.
just like tell me I agree because of A. I
Just jump
disagree
straight to
because of-
answering the question, which means you don't need introductory paragraphs to begin your answer because it's not essay. So that as much as we ask you to kind of unpack what's bad for Britain, blah blah blah, you don't need to have like bad for Britain essentially means da da da. So you don't need like intro paragraphs.
Yeah, it's not an English essay.
Why you laugh?
I don't know, I just imagine the students writing that and then they complain they got no time, just want to tear their paper away.
So yeah, I was talking about this. Not necessary for all sources to be used in order to get full marks.
Yeah,
For
that's
full marks to
true,
be
that's true.
awarded.
Yeah.
So just please really just strategize. Max for paragraph, jump to next question. And please don't write agree to
Oh,
any extent.
This is a pet peeve of
Like,
mine.
no need to write small, extent,
Oh my
medium, large.
goodness.
Like, we are not at Uniqlo, so you don't need to
Yeah.
choose any sizes.
Hey, okay, so this one is really a problem. I think especially for students that are taking geography, because geography actually we do allow when you say to a certain extent, right? Because the impacts are only affecting maybe at a certain time and a certain place, right? So it's to a certain extent. But for SS, the extent thing just complicates everything, okay? Because let's say agree or disagree is quite clear, right? Whether support or don't support. Okay, so if you say to a certain extent, is the extent 49.5% agree, 50.5% disagree. So is it agree or disagree? No one knows. Okay, so please don't throw away your marks like that by writing what extent to this extent, that extent, a larger extent. How much larger are we talking about? Is it like an upsize McDonald's meal? Is it like what 75.9%? I have no idea what I'm talking about. Okay, so if I see the word extent, I will
Mr. Tan just so triggered.
yes. Right. Okay, never mind.
So
Let's not
really
talk about
just
that.
write I agree or I disagree. Like, don't waste time to establish any extent. Please, huh? Okay, so remember your explanation should not be a mere repetition of the statement or rephrasing of your evidences. So, identify keywords, unpack them to establish criteria or telltale signs, weave into your explanation, be specific. So, always unpack keywords. If something is bad, you need to, what would you see to know that it's bad? Why is it bad? If something is good, what would you see to know that it's good? Why is it
Oh,
good?
just one thing to add here, other than what you see is bad, why is it bad? To whom it is bad? Like, is it to companies? Is it to the people in society, to citizens? Is it to the government? Like, of this particular place? Just be specific. Okay. That one.
Basically, the who,
the
what,
who, what,
why,
where, when. Yeah. I think if you can.
if it's possible.
Yeah, if it's possible, please write that down. Okay.
Can. So this is how you answer Judgement SBQ for SS. Hopefully this kind of clarifies whatever doubts that you have about the skill. But the most important thing is that you need to practice, because learning how to do versus practicing writing it out is really just very different.
So if you're done with your practices already, do you know who to pass it to?
Who?
I don't know. You?
To your SS teacher.
The SS teachers, alright? Okay, I think that's about all.
Okay, all the best, guys.
All the best.